Hello and welcome to ILTV's Insider. I'm Aaron Porras, and today a landmark event that really never should have had to be a landmark event. Israel's coalition finally agreeing on a state budget after 3 years without one.
חברי הממשלה, אנחנו, שר האוצר, אני וכולנו מביאים את הצעת תקציב המדינה לשנים 2021-2022 להצבעה. מי בעד? מי נגד? נמנעים? אין. רבותיי וגבירותיי, יש תקציב בישראל. אני מבקש מכל חברי הממשלה וחברות הממשלה להבין את גודל הרגע. אחרי שנים של הזנחה, אנחנו מביאים הבוקר את התקציב הכי נועז, הכי תחרותי, הכי דואג לשכבות החלשות, הכי נקי משיקולים צרים, והכי דואג לעתיד ילדינו מזה שנים רבות.
Still has several stages before it's fully approved. But Prime Minister Bennett and Finance Minister Lieberman are highlighting just some of the intentions behind the budget, as well as current ongoing initiatives, including completing the Tel Aviv Metro light rail, investments in infrastructure, transportation, healthcare, and real estate, also preventing bankruptcy among pensioners, overhauling kashrut certification and supervision, increasing competition and driving down costs of consumer goods, and much, much more. Of course, not all change is necessarily good, and there are a fair share of concerns. Opposition leader Netanyahu calling the proposal atrocious. And so joining us to discuss is value creation expert with the Academic College of Tel Aviv Jaffa, Alex Komen, and Professor Nadav Davidovich from the Department of Health Systems Management at Ben-Gurion University in the Negev. Thank you both so much for being with us. Now, first, Dr. Komen, I'm actually going to start with you. In June, Finance Minister Avigdor Lieberman assured the public that, quote, there will be no tax hike. We oppose a tax hike, taxes should not be raised, and there will be no going crazy on the budget issues, end quote. But this is clearly not the case. Was it ever possible for Israel to not raise taxes?
Well, we are currently coming out, hopefully coming out of a crisis. So when you're in crisis management mode, first of all, you must stop the bleeding, then you must start recovering. So we are talking about a 7% deficit of gross domestic product, which is going to decline to 4% next year, 2022. So obviously, there is going to be a hike of taxes, even though everybody understands that there's a price to that because higher taxes slow the economy. And we do want the economy to restart. But that's basically something that's inevitable given the big deficit that Israel moved into during the COVID period.
All right, well, so the two-year state budget allocates $187 billion for 2021 and $173 billion for the next year, 2022. It includes sweeping reforms, as I've already mentioned, including steep taxes on disposable plasticware and sugary drinks, and considerable changes to import policies. What might help us most in this arrangements bill, and what might hurt the public consumers the most?
Well, the bad thing about this budget, there are two bad things. One is the defense budget. I think the chief of staff came up with a request, assuming that there would be a very fierce negotiation period. And to his astonishment, his budget suggestion was accepted as is. And the second thing is the hike of prices on transportation from outside of Tel Aviv. And this is going to hurt the weaker layers of Israeli society because they usually live outside of Tel Aviv. They travel into Tel Aviv to work. And I think that these pieces of the population should be helped, particularly after the big crisis that they suffered, also after the war that we had with Gaza. So I think that in this case, the prices of public transportation does not make sense to raise them. And I think that the defense budget should be cut much more aggressively.
Interesting. All right, now we're going to come back to the transportation and maybe even the defense budget a little later. But Professor Davidovich, I want to bring you into the conversation. Healthcare, 2 billion shekels have been added to the health budget, which could mean cuts to the other ministries' budgets. And the purposes include assistance to public hospitals, shorter on-call shifts for resident doctors, improvement in the provisions of medical specialists in outlying areas, and expansion of the basket of available drugs in the public health system. How are you receiving this news?
First of all, the fact that we have a budget is already extremely important. There are many aspects, including, I'll give you one example. I'm from Ben-Gurion University. We were planning to open several services, including regarding the issue of STDs and all the programs for rehabilitation of people in prostitution. And because there was no budget, we couldn't even open it, although money was supposed to be allocated. So there are many different things related to the healthcare system that couldn't be planned even for the future. I think the 2 billion shekels added to the base of the budget, this is the main news here. It's not just for 1 year. This is a great success. This is the half full glass. I will continue with some good aspects. There's, for the first time in Israel history, money that is allocated in the basket for prevention, for health promotion. This is something we demanded for many years, because when in the basket things that are for prevention or health promotion are fighting against cancer, usually they are being set aside. There is finally a program for the mental health system. You know, it's neglected for many years. We had the deinstitutionalization program, but the community was not well prepared. And we have many other things that are, you know, showing the directive of the current Minister of Health about the need to invest in the periphery. Just one example, shortening hours of night shifts from 26 to 16 hours, but this will start as the pilot in the periphery. I think this is a very good message how priorities should be done. But I want to also talk about other parts of the budget, because, you know, health is influenced not just by healthcare, it's also influenced by social and environmental determinants of health. So, for example, the issue that was raised about transportation, public transportation, this is going to influence also our health. I'm very happy that there is a suggestion to raise taxes on beverages with high sugar. There are lots of studies showing that by the end, this is going to improve the situation of the lower income population, but this must be complemented with lowering the prices of the healthy foods. So this can be only as part of a much broader reform in terms of food security. This is something we are working on. The half-empty glass is that, you know, after COVID, people were sure that there'll be a great investment in the public healthcare system. Clapping is not enough. The money being allocated, it's a good sign, but this is not going to help us. There is the need to establish new hospitals, such as in the Negev. This is something that we appeal to the Supreme Court. There is not the money even to start planning this hospital, and there is a government decision for 2014. We are talking about planning the healthcare system for 2048. I'm the advisor of this plan. It's called TAMA 49, and many things are still being blocked. So I think it's a very good move in the right direction, but this is not going to solve all of the problem. And maybe the last thing is about the workforce, the stressed, tired workforce. There are some money allocated for the periphery to invest in a program called Ilanot for people living in the Negev, that if they are studying medicine or other health professions, their chance to remain in the Negev or in the Galil is 3 times more. We need to invest in them, and this is part of the budget. There are other parts that I think are going to go on the population, such as different taxes regarding punishment if you're not going to your specialist, or taxes on the private care system that I think it's good, but not the way it's now being suggested. So I think it's a mixed budget. I think the main promise is that there is a budget, and
well, so Dr. Coleman, I want to bring you back into this because Professor Davidovich just touched on a number of things, including supplemental taxes and reforms that will help healthcare. I think the first thing he mentioned was agricultural and import reforms, which you also touched upon, to drive down the cost of healthy options as a supplement to the sugar tax. You know, could you speak to that as far as how effective some of the new reforms on importing foods, goods, and creating competition in the agricultural sector in Israel is going to work? And primarily, there's been a major complaint really from the agricultural sector saying that this is going to harm Israel's food security and independence. So can you speak to those things?
Okay, one of the things I learned in the pharmaceutical industry is that the difference between poison and remedy is the dosage. So one thing that we understand is that we need Israeli agriculture to be competitive. But if we do this in a very aggressive way, if we get farmers to go bankrupt, this is going to be catastrophic. So we need to do this very carefully. So I'll give you two examples. One example is eggs. In Israel, we see that we can buy eggs much cheaper from abroad, say Turkey, for example. And Israeli growers say that this is a catastrophe. Now, in reality, I do want eggs to be grown in Israel, but I do not like the egg cartel, because the egg cartel basically prevents competition. So I, for instance, just theoretically cannot grow chickens to compete with them. And this is an example where the market is ineffective in Israel. The same thing is true about cows. So there's a shortage of milk, and there's a cartel preventing farmers from growing cows. So the first step should be removing these cartels so that the Israeli market, the internal market, becomes competitive. The next phase is to see where we want to be and where we do not want to be. For instance, if you think about cucumbers are an area where there's fierce competition, say from Turkey, because the Turks have infinite amount of land, infinite amount of water, and very cheap labor. So normally I would not like to grow cucumbers in Israel because from an economic point of view, I'm at a deficit. On the other hand, you do not see threats of importing watermelon, mango, avocado, etc., because these are Israeli growers. They have fabulous product, okay? Dates, for example, Israeli dates are famous world around. So the thing is that you want to allocate a piece of a window of opportunity for farmers that grow products that are not competitive, either because, for instance, they consume a lot of water or labor where Israel is not as competitive, and to shift them towards products where we are extremely competitive. So if I talk about flowers, we are a powerhouse in this area, seedless watermelon, etc. So you want to move from low-tech agriculture to high-tech agriculture, which means that you provide the vegetables off-season, so you can supply things, you can grow things near the Dead Sea, where the weather is very warm, so you can grow vegetables there and sell them to Europe off-season, so you get fabulous prices. So we do not need to grow everything. We need to be competitive internally, and we need to grow the things where we have a competitive advantage. And once we have that, we will thrive, and the farmers will thrive, and everybody will be happy.
All right. Now, Dr. Coleman, I want to follow up on something that you mentioned in terms of what really sparked my interest was how you spoke about the cartels in the agricultural business, or in the agricultural sector. Does this budget do enough to break up those cartels? Does it work with the market that you described, or does it cause more harm than good?
Well, right now they talk about reducing taxes on imports. For a long time, agriculture in Israel was completely protected. There were no imports, and slowly the imports arrived. I did not see in the current budget measures addressing the point that I mentioned, the egg and the milk cartel. I just saw the idea of opening the market for competition. We've had a shortage of butter because the milk cartel forced the price of butter to be high, or the price of milk to be high, and the price of butter was low. So in that case, we saw imports. So no, I do not see the budget take care of the cartels, but I think that it will be applied in a cautious way. Actually, I hope it will be applied in a cautious way so that it does not cause harm to the farmers.
All right, now, Professor Davidovich, I want to come back to you. Another big change, which is causing a lot of controversy, the gradual raising of the retirement age for women to 65 over the course of 11 years at a rate of 4 months per year for 3 years and 3 months a year for a further 8 years. I get the other details maybe not so necessary, but the point is that we're increasing the retirement age. How might this affect the public health?
There is a direct connection between people working. I think that, you know, if conducted the right way, it's a good move. We see the aging population as a part of, you know, the future of the country. The population above 65 will increase in the coming decades from about 11% to 17%. I think that you can raise the age, but on the other hand, maybe you need to reduce the working hours and be much more efficient. I think that throughout the pandemic, we saw how people can work also from afar. They can work at home. We need to be much more flexible about that. Of course, we need to be very sensitive about the influence on inequalities, because these kind of income inequalities, especially in the elderly, it's affecting dramatically also health inequalities. I want to return to the question of taxes, if possible. I think that one suggestion that we gave years ago was to have some of the different taxes, especially those related to health. Now we have the beverages with high sugar, but also smoking. And the idea is to have some designated money for health promotion and to invest back in the, I know that the Minister of Finance, they don't like when there is designated money, but I think that today, for example, to give you one example, we discussed the issue of smoking among the Arab population. Arab men smoking rates are about 47%. So the taxes that comes from Arab population because of their smoking habits, unfortunately, this is close to 3 billion shekels. And we're not investing enough in this population in targeted programs. This just to give you one example. So taxes, you mentioned at the beginning the issue of taxes. I'm not so afraid from the right taxes, especially if they are progressive ones. By the way, the public voted in different polls that are willing to raise the health tax that is quite low in Israel in order to get more services, because now some of the services are private services. Sure. And 80% are paying private taxes anyway, and this is regressive. So taxes are part of policy, and I think we need to do it the right way.
All right, Dr. Coleman, it looked like you had a response.
Yeah, regarding raising the retirement age for women, I think this is inevitable because women live 4 years longer than men, and as a result, retiring earlier does not make any sense. And an interesting action that was added to that was adding maternity leave for men. So this way, women will not necessarily take the maternity leave, but there will be the possibility for the husband to take care of the kids, and the woman could continue to pursue her career. And this way, I think we will see men and women more involved in raising the kids, and women achieving higher positions in the economy. So I think this is a great thing. And we should remember, I'm completely for the additional money for our healthcare, but we should remember that we have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. It's true that the healthcare system in Israel basically squeezes the life out of young graduates in the sense that they work around the clock. So I think that the measure of giving them a more moderate responsibility is really, really very welcome.
All right, now another change that is included in the arrangements bill was approval of the congestion tax for traffic around Tel Aviv, which we touched on briefly. It won't be enforced until 2024, but many, including Transportation Minister Michaeli, say that the public transportation infrastructure must be updated to absorb the reduction in drivers. And this is just one example of many critics who are saying that, that this arrangements bill, that this budget puts the cart before the horse. How do you respond, Dr. Cohen? Do you know of other examples where maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves?
Well, first of all, there's no doubt about the fact that we must have public transportation from the periphery to the center of Israel. This is important for Israel and for the weaker layers of the population. We've seen the train system, it's been improved, but not enough. I think there are several measures there where the train system, the management of expansion of the trains, of changing the trains from diesel to electricity, of bringing them further to the periphery, quite a few of these initiatives have failed. And the same is true also in the center of Tel Aviv, of Israel. So there's a problem of budgeting and a problem of execution. And I hope that perhaps now the taxes are going to be raised later on. So I hope that in this period of time, there would be significant, dramatic investment in transportation to the center. The train is very popular in Israel, but it should be expanded drastically.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alex Cohen, Professor Nadav Davidovich, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to discuss this budget with you guys, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about in the future. I'm Aaron Porras, and please, everyone watching at home, please tune in next time on Insider for more on everything Israel. If there's a topic that you'd like us to cover next, let us know about it in the comment sections online. And finally, for more news from Israel, follow ILTV on Facebook and on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and ILTV.tv channels. Thank you so much. Be well. We'll see you soon.